Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, July 12th, 2022, Washington County Board of Commissioners work session. This is Chair Catherine Harrington, and I'm joined this morning with Commissioners Pam Treese, Nafisa Fai, Roy Rogers, and Jerry Willey. We have a very full agenda today, so I hope we'll all be mindful of what's on it so that we can be done by the estimated 4:30 timeframe. And hopefully none of you have hard stops before then. So note the posted agenda. So, okay, board and leadership communication. Who would like to go first?
I will go first.
Great.
So we don't waste any precious moments. Yeah, it's kind of nice to get back into a little bit of a summer routine and in-person meetings. I had the opportunity to have lunch with Andrew McGough from WSI last week. Had a really good an update. I had asked him to sit down and have a conversation about their involvement in Washington County. And so he provided me with a packet of information. It was a good lunch. It was good to also, be in a face-to-face meeting. And later that day went to the Timbers Stadium for Portland Business Alliance annual meeting. That was also very well attended. Had Representative Bonamici and Blumenauer and a few others were there. Plus we had speakers and some presentations to make. So it was a good day. We sat outside in the stadium and it got really warm and as we proceeded through the afternoon, but it was very good. They did a great job. It's good to see all those folks I hadn't seen in about 2.5 years. Also had lunch with Greg Munn. Greg, thank you very much. It was very enjoyable. Good conversations. And so welcome aboard and certainly look forward to working with you. Fair Board met in hybrid fashion last week. So there was about 3 or 4 of us that met in Wingspan for the meeting in person, and then the rest were on Zoom. We have 9 days until the fair starts. So please put that on your calendars and plan to make a visit or two out there. Say hi to the 4-H kids. It's very important that we do what we can to help that organization kind of bolster its count and its involvement right now. COVID was not kind to 4-H. And so, so we need to help them get kids reinterested in the programs. The Fair Board will be providing 7 a.m. breakfast for those kids the last 4 days of the parade, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that will be, and that's always a fun time. The kids really appreciate that. Had a Forest Trust Lands meeting as well. We continue to have conversations with the Board of Forestry and communicating our concerns with the proposed draft of the HCP. It's interesting that under this draft proposal, there's going to be significant financial impact, not only to the counties, but to the Board of Forestry. And so they're going to need to go back to the state if this goes through and get some backfill money as well. So it has financial implications that are very, very broad. So we continue to have those conversations. It's very informational and educational for me. Thank you, Clean Water Services, for the update on certainly the Scoggins Dam project, and always interesting to have conversations about the importance of water and in our county and certainly in our region. So we're very blessed, quite frankly. I think Mark would agree that we have a full lake. Certainly if you look around in the Northwest and on the West in general, Lake Mead for starters, you can see that they do not have a full lake. And so we're very blessed with that. This week I have ROMAC, Rural Roads. Going to talk about the Safety on 6 project there on Highway 6. I've got the TV Highway Steering Committee and the PSCCC. So PSCC. So yeah, it's busy times, but it's also really nice to get back in person. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Who would like to go next? Go ahead, Commissioner Fye.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Harrington. And I think before I start my leadership update or board update, I wanted to ask a question to Commissioner Willie, if that's okay. Something from your updates. Last 2021, we had a meeting with the Washington County Fair Board meeting together. Is that an annual thing or is that one time off? And if so, are we having one this year?
I know the chair's shaking her head yes and no and whatever, but I don't have it on my calendar. So if we're going to do it, what do you know,
yeah,
Chair?
we do have an annual meeting with the Fair Board. That's on our calendars for the coming months. What Commissioner Fye is referring to is last year we were invited to a special social event, not a formal meeting with the Fair Board during the fair. And so I think that's what she's referring to.
Yeah, was that an
This is
annual
our
thing?
annual meeting.
Of course, I will invite you to the fair personally, Nafisa. Bring your children. And we'll have some corn. We'll have some corn dogs and stuff. What?
Okay, thank you. It was a good to interact with the board members and good way to learn the fair myself. So I was wondering if that was an annual thing rather than just one off with a social event, but I got my answers. I'll keep my brief short and quick to say that last week I had a vacation and then the week before that we had a 4th of July celebration. So I don't have much to report back other than to say to highlight things that happened. One during my vacation, which is I attended our CPO 6 meeting. And one of the topics that I'm really interested in connecting with the activist was a lively discussion that took place at the CPO 6 meeting on July 7th, which is around the Beaverton's Cooper Mountain Community Plan and Resource Protection. So I look forward to meeting with some of the groups championing that change. And I think I have a meeting with them, which one of them happens to be former Commissioner Dick Scouten for District 1. So I look forward to that conversation and discussion, and I'll report back what the community members are asking around that. And then the other one right before the vacation, both for the 4th of July and my own vacation, I attended a workshop for Mpac members, which was around the regional transportation plan, and Chair Craddock and facilitator Allison Brown facilitated the conversation, and it was more grounded around small group discussion and reporting back, mainly on goals and of the RTP and the future direction, and then really evaluating and having a robust conversation around the vision. So some of them, I don't know if members would prefer I forward email around that. Chris Duffenbach did a really great job of summarizing the takeaways from that meeting workshop, but I really enjoyed it, and we had some good conversations around, how do we put together language that folks around the region can relate to and can resonate with. So I look forward to the next workshop. I think there's like 4 of them on the books for all of us. But I'll keep you posted. Good discussions. Look forward to what the new vision looks like for the RTP, and where we go and how we condense the goals for the RTP. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Fye. Who would like to go next?
I'd like to go last, and Chair, maybe even following you, because I'd like to read my statement.
I'll, with that in mind, I just simply say that last week was a little lighter on meetings, had a workforce development meeting, which is what we call the large board, which is a lot of folks. And they always have nice presentations. This person was from the state talking about unemployment, and we all have our own theories and ideas as to why we're having heavy amounts of folks who are not back in the market for jobs and why the market is so tight. So that's interesting. I also listened to what Nafisa was talking about, the sessions of Mpac. I find them interesting to hear the directions. For the last week, we had a opening of the Viewfinder. I won't say anything. I was in the back row listening. Our chair did a great job of being one of the presenters. It's a little odd in a local project to have the governor, a congresswoman, county chair, mayor, representative from Metro, and kind of you don't see that normally. This week I know one on Wednesday, hearing Tigert again on some senior housing. That I'll again be a voice or a face in the crowd, and I don't know whether, Catherine, you're speaking or not, but hopefully you're going to say something, or somebody will ask you to say something. I have a HB 2017 transit meeting this Friday morning, and it's I haven't looked at the agendas, but we've pretty well just been listening to Metro, or not Metro, but TriMet talk about funding sources and where they'd like to allocate money, and where that is significant, I guess, to the county is it then goes to a good committee here at the county who takes a look at those priorities and sees how it fits in our particular aspirations. And so that's really the effect. So that's then been meeting with some local mayors and some Garrett Rosenthal, and also the city manager in Tigard. And I did go to the parade in King City. That was a nice little parade. It was I haven't done one that small. I think the last one I was at was Hillsborough. We used to be invited all the time as a commission, and that was always interesting. This one was very small and no floats, just people in golf carts and walking along. But very nice to have communication along the routes, and so it's always interesting. But and we, Jerry and I met with Diane yesterday, and Mark, hear the updates. Always good to hear those updates on what's happening. Pretty familiar, I think we all are with that, but you bring it home. I won't steal a thunder, but when you said $5 billion for a new dam, that sounded a little high, Mark. Yeah, no, it wasn't that number. Okay. All right. So you'll all get your updates. So that's it.
Great, I'll go next, and Commissioner Treese will do sweep. Boy, it sure was nice to have a somewhat quiet July 4th week last week. Many folks on vacation. That was just wonderful. But as usual, our staff has continued to crank out the really good work in service to our community. And I know that my inbox has received some good updates from them. So on behalf of all of us who are trying to catch up, not having spent as the usual amount of time in touch with our county work and inboxes, I just wanted to call those to your attention. We have a nice update on county parks and some county-owned land. We have another communication on affordable housing portfolio projects that are impacted by the Reagan era tax credits expiration of just 30 years. And if I could, Ms. Angie, Commissioner Rogers and I received a really great update from Stephen Roberts on a meeting that our staff held with the Tualatin City Council on the extension of the Basalt Creek Parkway and the noise analysis. We, well, at least four of us, when we were here in 2019, I think it was, maybe it was 2020. We had a work session, 2 of them, with a noise expert, and that same noise expert joined our staff in talking about noise walls and noise analysis and so forth. Anyway, it's a good update. Have a look. Earlier this week, I attended the AOC Board of Directors meeting, which was virtual, and I assume you all have that packet, but I just wanted to note a couple of things. Jackson County has chosen to not renew their membership for the remainder of the year and into the future. I forwarded some information to all of you. One of our colleagues, Judge Dan Joyce from Malheur County, is active with the Western Interstate region of NACO. That's the region we're part of, and is now the president of the region. And each year the region has at least one meeting face-to-face. So that's coming up in October. And we're all encouraged to support our colleague by showing up. So you've got that. Oh, prior to that, sorry, we went over the AOC audit report. So that was a clean audit. There are some smaller improvements they'll be making with regard to vacation and compensatory leave unfunded liability, and making sure that's documented correctly. They are doing an RFP for a new firm and hope to have a selection in October. Then we got a report out from a committee that is working on updating the bylaws. So that information is being directed to each of our AOC district meetings. So as Commissioner Treese, as the District 8 Vice Chair, is working with the District 8 Chair, Commissioner Sonia Fisher, on our meeting coming up, I think it's the last week of September, we'll be going over that. And then from there, we will be approving those or not at the annual business meeting in November. We also got a short update on the work to update AOC's strategic plan. That information will also be going out through the September district meetings, then back to the Board of Directors in October, into the membership meeting in November. Oh, and there is a new legislative affairs government relations person starting in a couple of weeks. And the grand opening for the new AOC building, well, the new ownership of the building, will be next February. So that's it from AOC. As Commissioner Rogers mentioned, there was the Viewfinder grand opening. That was a project that had the benefit of certainly the Metro bond money, hence city, county, and Metro doing work together on that. Then the federal government provided additional veterans housing dollars. VASH support is what the name was. And in addition, the state had some involvement as well, hence the big gathering to sort of celebrate in person. But it's a really great project, and it was wonderful to see everyone. So in that vein, making sure our community knows that we are indeed following up in delivering additional affordable housing thanks to their voter-approved funding. As Commissioner Rogers mentioned, the Tigard Senior Housing Project will be having the groundbreaking tomorrow afternoon. And I know I'm trying to make sure that all 5 of us feel invited to every single groundbreaking and grand opening so that we can do our part to help ensure our community members have the opportunity to know that their government is following up. Lastly, I wanted to let you know that ODOT has contacted me to get a commissioner appointment to the Regional Toll Advisory Committee. As this relates to the work of the Regional Transportation Plan and our regional connectivity, I would recommend that we appoint our JPAC rep, Commissioner Fye, to serve as our advisory committee. So I just wanted to put that out there for thumbs up from the commissioners so we can get that in time. They've asked for a really fast turnaround. So, yep, that's good.
So can I ask Nafisa? I'm assuming the chair has talked to you in advance of this, so you're okay with this? It's a pretty complex project, and I certainly will appreciate the information that and the representation you do for us. So I just wanted to make sure that you're on board with that. So thank you for doing that. And Chair, could I ask you one more question while my mic is off? To go back to the Western Association of Counties, I got that email. I can't remember the name that you threw out there, but isn't that date in conflict with WEFTEC? I think I looked on my calendar and I had a conflict for that. Was I looking at the right thing? Do you remember?
It may well conflict with WEFTEC. It's a meeting date set up by NACO and the Regional Association.
I thought it was in early October, and I'll double check on that. I just was thinking it conflicted with WEFTEC, so I was going to try and figure out how we did that. So thank you.
Well, I think we're the consumers of each of those dates versus getting to control them. So it makes for some interesting logistics sometimes to try and get to everything. All right, that's it for me. I'm looking forward to our roundtable this Thursday. We've got a lot to go over and plan for. And in addition, we've got some time to sync up on our rolling agendas so that we're not surprised when September rolls around. And it's like, Shazam, this is what's on our plate. So that's it from me. I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Treese.
Thank you, Chair. And before I get started on my update, I have a plan for this afternoon before the executive session got put on there. I worked with Tom Carr and others to get prepared, and then the executive session switched. So I'll need to leave about 4:10, 4:15. So I just want you to know that. My update, I took a week off as well. It was the first week of our 2-week hiatus. So I was with family the week of June 27th. Last week, Mpac did a tour of the Orenco Woods Nature Park. And part of the purpose in doing that was to be aware of how the bond dollars are spent and looking at the potential renewal of the Nature and Parks bond that Metro is doing. It was a great opportunity to be at the park. The park is actually in my district, in District 2, so that was kind of fun. But Mayor Callaway was there, and all of the councilors were there, with the exception of the president, who was traveling. But it really was a great opportunity, and it's a beautiful park if you haven't been there. I too, Commissioner Willie, had a lunch with Greg Munn, and it was much appreciated. It's great to have him on board, and I'm looking forward to working with him. As the chair mentioned, I had an AOC prep call with Commissioner Fisher regarding our September District 8 meeting, and there is interest from Clackamas County, and I'll share this here and see if you share this interest in doing a presentation around the intersection of behavioral health, homelessness, and substance abuse. So they're interested in learning about issues like the cats and other pieces. So I think that it's a great idea, and I think it would be beneficial for all commissioners in District 8 to understand what we're each doing, since the need is fluid. It moves across our borders. It's incumbent upon us to understand what everybody's doing. So
But
that
just to confirm, it sounds like we're going to have 3 different big ticket items we need to go over. So I just want to make sure that it doesn't get planned as a 2-hour meeting. Plus, I know we'll all be thrilled to be together in person. So you certainly have support from me as one of many District 8 commissioners in planning out a healthy half day for this.
Well, and I'm pushing for a little bit more time because it's a very full agenda. So thank you for saying that. I also had a really good meeting with a group called Next Up, and that's the group is formerly the Bus Project. So they're looking at their involvement in Washington County and how they can focus youth on some of our advisory boards, committees, and just be connected with Washington County. It was a very positive meeting, and I'm looking forward to learning more about them. Then yesterday, I had a tour of THPRD properties. My personal goal for this year is to go to all of the parks in District 2 that are THPRD parks. There's like 65 of them, so there's a lot. I've already got quite a few checked off. But yesterday, it was about a half day with Doug Menke and Holly Thompson, really looking at things like the interconnection of the trail system, where the county is working with THPRD to make sure that we have our north-south connectors, issues like that. It was a good meeting, and I appreciated their time. The CPO7, I reported at CPO7. I was invited to do a presentation on board initiatives for this coming year for District 2, and it was a good meeting. And I can't thank Stephen Roberts and Ben Lively enough for always attending the meetings, along with Melissa DeLicer, but also being able to answer questions that, frankly, I can't answer sometimes. They also did a presentation on the work that we did on the Salzman project. So, and that was a good discussion. So I appreciated the support and the opportunity to talk to the community. Also yesterday, Commissioner Fye and I met with Mayor Beatty, and since both of our districts are have a considerable piece of the city, we want to make sure that we're doing this on an ongoing basis moving forward. So it was a good conversation. This week, I have the Mpac Coordinating Committee meeting. We're going to be talking about the upcoming topics like we always do. I have the Los Amigos groundbreaking, which is in Cornelius, that I will be attending. And I also have a Central Cultural Board meeting. So that's my history and my future for where I stand today. And now what I'd like to do is take a moment, and this is on our agenda, to read a statement that the statement is a statement I'm making. It is in the plural. I refer to we in case there are others who would like to join on to this statement or not. So if I could have your indulgence here for a moment. We are dismayed and frustrated that our U.S. Supreme Court has chosen to disregard nearly 50 years of legal precedent protecting the right to an abortion in this country. The Dobbs versus Jackson women's health decision overturning Roe versus Wade is devastating to current and future generations of individuals no longer at liberty to make decisions about their own bodies. The right to plan a family and access confidential and comprehensive family services is as much about health care as it is about social justice. Without this right, pregnant people cannot make decisions that are truly in the best interest to live independent, productive, and economically sustainable lives. Oregon has a history of valuing and protecting reproductive freedom. As a result of dedicated advocates and progressive leaders, abortion is still legal here, and we continue to avoid waiting periods and other typical barriers imposed by states that are hostile to abortion rights. In the states that are closing medical facilities offering abortion services, those impacted the greatest will be the ones most marginalized by our society. Low-income individuals and people of color who have historically borne the brunt of injustice. As we face this shocking moment in our nation's history, we stand in solidarity with the West Coast governors in opening our doors to patients who will most acutely feel the ramifications of this reversal and the very real threat of an uncertain future. We are concerned about the impact reversals have on the health of our local economy, our state economy, and our larger national economy. We also fear what further actions the U.S. Supreme Court may take to overturn other legal precedent enshrining the rights that we hold dear. We support and continue to defend the liberty to reproductive health and freedom, and we are watching the highest court in the land with scrutiny. So I will be signing this statement and putting it into public record. Are there comments?
I'll start. I thank you for your invitation to join you in issuing this statement. I appreciate your putting it together, and I am more than happy to join you in making this statement. It also comes on the heels of this board having directed our Department of Health and Human Services to take steps necessary to protect our community's ability to access necessary health care and other critical services, as we discussed and approved on September 10th, 2019. It's just more clear and acute given the recent Supreme Court effort. And I thank your championing the work of the Western states governors as well. Thank you.
Pam, I'm happy to make a couple of comments off the top of my head. I certainly understand that people get emotional about these things when they occur. Oregon has a long, rich tradition of following states' rights. We have death with dignity laws, which are not federal law, but we do that. We have issues regarding marijuana use that this state has adopted, not federal law. And so sending rights back to the states is not new to us, and I guess I'm not quite as concerned. I won't be signing on to your statement, and the reason I won't be is that I consider a lot of positions to be very radical. I'm somewhere in the middle in terms of I understand rape, incest. I understand a certain period of time in which abortions should be legal. I have a hard time with full-term abortions, late-term abortions. To me, that's just cruel and inhumane, and I can't get there. And so we haven't taken a position that's, I think, reflective of most people who are not opposed to abortion. They want some sidebars on it. And when I saw what the Western governors were saying, I mean, there was no constraints at all. And so whether you're a person of faith or not, there is times where you say, I can't get there. I mean, that's a road too far. But I certainly understand the emotions. I certainly understand why people are concerned, and I will not be voting in favor or signing my name or whatever we decide to do.
I appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, and I will step up next. I believe this is a deeply personal and private issue from the from the standpoint of us making a public statement I also think it's, I wish there would have been conversation with commissioners before we moved ahead on this. I believe if you'll note, Multnomah County states it was a unanimous decision. I applaud them for being unanimous in their message. We are not there, and therefore makes this somewhat divisive from the standpoint of those of us who are not going to sign on to this letter feel the responsibility to convey why. And I believe again that that's a personal issue that I'd be glad to have with individuals, but probably more closely only my close friends. I also think it's divisive with messaging for our staff. We do not know where our staff stand on this. We have 2,300 employees, and I have no idea what the percentage of pros and cons would be, but I do know that there would be a difference, just like there are in every other venue that we go to. And I believe that we send a message to both of those. One will certainly embrace it, and the other will not. And then our constituents, same conversation with our constituents. We do not know where we stand. We are to represent Washington County. And I believe anytime that we do something like this publicly in a public meeting, we are representing either the commission, and in this case, it's not, because it's not unanimous. So we must be representing our own personal feelings about it. And I don't think this is the place that we should be doing that. So with that, it concerns me, the we part, Pam, as you identified, and I appreciate the fact that you called that out. But I will not be signing this letter either.
Thank you. I appreciate your perspective again, and I will let you know that it is not a letter. I think I want to make sure that that's clear, that this is a statement. So there isn't a recipient that I am proposing that this be sent to. And secondarily, I did work with Marnie on this to make sure that it was a piece that would be consistent with the views of the county in relationship to providing access to care.
I'll go next. Thank you, Commissioner Teresa. You have my thumbs up to put my name under your statements as well. And I think there's a good news that the Biden administration found a way to protect abortion access federally. I think they found a loophole of federal law on the books to protect abortion access. And I think the Emergency Medical Care and Active Labor Act, which was signed into law in 1986, I think is still in effect. And I think a lot of people, this is a breaking news, I think yesterday, but and I think everybody from watching the news last night, everybody's sort of scrambling. But this law actually requires doctors stabilizing treatment to pregnant patients, and it also shields providers from being sued for providing clinical judgment to provide the best possible care in emergency medical situations. And then what's more interesting yesterday was that the health secretary of the US sent a letter to all doctors in America saying that, and I quote because I had to find this quote, under the law, no matter where you live, women have the right to emergency care, including abortion. And then the White House backed it up saying, federal law preempts state abortion laws. So I think it's comforting to know for those of us who support abortion access and healthcare and consider abortion as a healthcare, that the White House is working hard to figure out a way to keep federal law protecting abortion access. So you have my support to put my name down, and hopefully abortion will be less politicized in the future, and that we put politics aside and center health and healthcare.
Thank you, Commissioner Fye, and thank you for the update. I look forward to learning more about the impact of those decisions. So with that, Chair, I'd like to turn it back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner Treese. Were there any last commissioner updates? All right, we'll move on then to leadership communication. Ms. Angie, welcome back from vacation. It's good to have you back, but your team did great.
Of course they did, and I appreciate Erin Calvert serving as acting. I had a wonderful week with family in Minnesota, spending time on the lake and seeing my 99-year-old grandma who turns 100 next month. So it was a good time. So I do want to give a brief update on supportive housing services. Our team is actively planning for a week-long training for our system partners, so our contract partners, at the end of August. This will include housing case managers, outreach workers, community connect assessors, and health and human services liaisons. We expect about 50 to 75 case managers to be trained over the course of the week with a variety of program and services approaches. This will include trauma-informed care, behavioral health, first aid, and so forth. So we're really excited to be working closer with our community partners as we deliver supportive housing services. Chair, you had mentioned ribbon cuttings and grand openings for the affordable housing bond. I do want to extend, we are looking at how we can implement that same practice with supportive housing services, because this is really the continuum of housing services that we are providing, and recognizing the significant community investment that our taxpayers are making, both in the affordable housing bond and also in the supportive housing services. So more to come as our team continues to plan out how we can approach that work. I do want to celebrate, we have executed the contracts for workforce development partnerships. And so we are partnering with not just one community-based organization, but 9 community-based organizations to advance services, trainings, and educational opportunities for local workers. The organizations include Central Cultural of Washington County, Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, Muslim Education Trust, Northwest Regional Education Service District, Portland Community College, Portland Youth Builders, Urban League, Working Theory Farm, and Work System. So we're really expanding our economic development workforce partnerships, and so looking forward to seeing the outcomes from this ARPA investment as we move forward. Chair, you had mentioned roundtable, and we'll be syncing up on the rolling agendas. I do want to let the board know that we are actively planning to resume in-person board meetings on September 1st, which is a roundtable, which will be a good way to kind of ease in to that practice. We do plan on beginning that roundtable with a bit of orientation as a group, because this will, I will say for myself, be my first time in the work session room. I know County Council Cars and Commissioner Fye's as well. So this will be a new experience for all of us, and looking forward to being back in person with the board. I do want to indicate all meetings moving forward will be hybrid. So that is an increased access in ensuring health and safety, both for our community and also our staff and other participants. So more information will be shared in an email with your board. And that concludes my update.
Thank you, Ms. Angie. Mr. Carr, how about you?
Good morning, Chair Harrington. I actually have a few things to tell you this morning. Mostly on the litigation front, entirely on the litigation front. So as you know, BG against Washington County is a case challenging, seeking an order in the nature of what we call mandamus, directing the county to approve a subdivision that the county has already approved, a development the county has already approved, We oppose that. Basically, the suit was brought to cut off community participation. We oppose that. This week, the judge issued an order denying our motion to dismiss. So we are currently considering whether or not to appeal that. And if commissioners are interested, I'd be happy to have an executive session to discuss that. In the Ridwell litigation, the state court, as you know, denied the motion for preliminary injunction. We filed yesterday a motion for what we call judgment on the pleadings to dismiss the case. Ridwell filed a motion for judgment on the pleadings to get to win judgment. So we will have a resolution on that relatively quickly. Oral argument is tentatively scheduled for August 1st. No on 878 is the federal case involving the tobacco ordinance 878. That case, the judge denied the motion for preliminary injunction and scheduled for a quick oral argument on the question of whether the federal court should abstain while the state court was considering the question of the ballot title. As you know, that question is currently before the Oregon Court of Appeals. So we filed a motion for, the plaintiffs filed a response to our request to abstain yesterday. Our reply to that is due on Friday. We assume that the judge will address that hopefully before the end of the month. I'm sorry, there's a lot of this stuff. In the state court tobacco litigation, that is in that case, the judge granted the motion for preliminary injunction, basically saying that since you're not enforcing this, there's no harm in doing that. The reply on the motion to dismiss was filed on Monday, so we are proceeding. Hopefully, we'll get an oral argument on that quickly and get that case dismissed or not, depending on which way the judge goes. One other thing: the Linn County against the state of Oregon case, the timber litigation. As you know, the Court of Appeals reversed the trial court, dismissing the case. The petitioners have filed a petition with the Oregon Supreme Court seeking review. They filed that on July 6th. We are, as you know, the county is not an active participant in that, but we are part of the class represented by Linn County in that case. And I think that's enough. Thank you.
A quick question for you, Mr. Carr. If commissioners wish to have a executive session on the BG case, they should just let you know and
Yes,
you'll
please.
get it on the agenda. Okay,
Yes.
I just wanted to make that clear to commissioners. Just let Mr. Carr know. Okay.
Yes. Happy to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Jockers, thank you for being here for Clean Water Services.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, members of Clean Water Services Board. I too got an opportunity to take a vacation last week, but not to Minnesota, but to Montana to see my family as well, which was lovely. I'm happy to be back. In the meantime, the teams here were working literally over the holiday weekend for two major projects that launched last Tuesday, July 5th. One is the launch of our new updated and designed website, which has been going through a process over the last probably 18 months. Frantically there at the end, there were elements that the team was working on over the weekend so we could get that happening on July 5th. Perhaps even more consequentially on July 5th, the new customer service portal, our customer information system, billing software system that we have been in design with Tualatin Valley Water District for 3 years, went live on July 5th. And similar to the communication folks who had to work through the holiday weekend to get things going, there were some final elements that our customer service team really had to put together. And that's tremendous kudos to our CFO, Kathy Leader, and to also our budget officer, Aaron Lowry, who really shepherded that project across the finish line. We're very pleased to get those out there. I also want to say that this is the beginning of the new fiscal year. Also, July 5th marks the period where we are starting to formally implement our telecommuting policies for our employees as our employees start coming back to the office on a regular basis rather than the emergency teleworking that we were doing under the COVID policy. So that is, there's transitions at work. All of a sudden, the parking lot, there's more people in the parking lot now. There's more people in the office. It's kind of the orientation to say, who are you? And I haven't seen you in 2 years. So that's very, very nice. I also want to thank Commissioners Rogers and Willie for our conversation yesterday on Scoggins Dam, and we will be having similar conversations with other board members over the next week or so to bring them up to speed on status of that particular project. So with that, that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for any of our leadership? All righty. Well, seeing none, we'll jump right into the next topic on our work session agenda. And I'd like to welcome the housing team to talk with us about the future and community engagement process for the Hillsborough Bridge Shelter. So take it away, staff. Thank you.
Comey, your voice.
We got the Mickey Mouse sound effect going on. Those audio filters will get you every time.
Well, good morning, Chair Harrington and Board. While Comey gets his sound going here, I'll just kind of kick us off. So we're excited to be with you this morning to talk about the future of the Hillsborough Bridge Shelter. I do believe Shannon or Clerk Moss, we have a presentation we can put up on the screen here.
Yeah, so I was going to share my screen, but oh, now I can. Sorry, do that.
Do I sound better?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to take over, Comey.
I just want to quickly mention that this has been a collaborative effort. The Hillsborough Bridge Shelter, we've worked with county administration, with facilities, with Office of Equity and Inclusion, and obviously the housing staff have been engaged from day one. The property actually is owned by the county through facilities, but we housing have been running the Bridge Shelter up till now. And so with that, we'll go to the PowerPoint, and I believe Jess will join us for Q&A. Jess Larson. So take it away, Shannon.
I will go ahead and jump in. So just a quick agenda. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the site acquisition, what the current use is, and then what we really want to discuss with your board is the options for future use and the community engagement process. Next slide, please. And just in case I forgot to, just for public record, my name is Josh Kreitz. I'm the Assistant Director of the Housing Department. Thanks. As you may recall, the Hillsborough Bridge Shelter is a former 60-room hotel. It's located over on 10th Avenue in Hillsborough. It's really well connected to public transit, to services, to parks and libraries. So it's optimally located. Again, purchased by Washington County in April of 2021 with Project Turnkey funds from the state of Oregon. That's OCF, the Oregon Community Foundation. And really, if we go back in time, COVID was still raging. So it's for the immediate purpose of providing COVID respite shelter, as well as providing shelter to homeless individuals and couples. Again, the funds had a very short turnaround time, and so that reduced the possibility of extensive community engagement process prior to the purchase. And as Comey just mentioned, the housing services staff worked with facility staff to negotiate and purchase what is now the Bridge Shelter in Hillsborough. Next slide, please. Before I turn it over to Shannon, there's a couple slides I just wanted to focus on here. So again, right now, the way that this very, very innovative shelter is being operated is that our county facility staff, who's done a wonderful job just in maintaining it, keeping up with the day-to-day maintenance and operation. So it's been just a great partnership. Again, I always like to highlight that because I think that's one thing in Washington County I just find extremely unique and really refreshing to work in an environment with all the partnerships between departments. The non-congregate shelter is run for 60 individuals and it's operated by Greater Good Northwest. And this is done under contract with operating costs being covered by the Supported Housing Services or SHS program. So operating costs for the shelter staff and running it day-to-day is supported by SHS. Next slide, please. So before I turn it over to Shannon, who's going to kind of run us through just a short list of potential options for the site, there's some considerations we just want to make your board aware of. One is that the project turnkey funding itself, the money that we received from the state of Oregon, over $6 million, requires that the site does continue to be used as housing. It could be low-income housing, it could be workforce housing, it could be a shelter, it could be permanent supportive housing, but some type of housing use. So I want to baseline state that. We find that the building is fairly well maintained. Again, we had a capital needs assessment, as we purchased it to make sure that the building was operational, but it is 44 years old, built in 1978. As we continue to look forward at future years considerations, we do know that the Supportive Housing Services Program has goals related to providing shelter beds and permanent supportive housing, and that is a major consideration in the needs of our community. And then on the idea of long-term ownership, there's a lot of different options there that we just want to make your board aware of. It can continue to be owned by the county and operated by the county. It could be used private, or a nonprofit entity could own this property, and it could still continue to serve the community in whatever way the board and the community thinks is the best use. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Shannon, who's going to kind of walk us through some of the options and some questions that we have for your board.
All right, well, good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. Thanks for this opportunity to be with you. As Comey and Josh said, I'm Shannon Wilson, Housing Development Manager. And so I will kind of take the baton, as it were, from Josh and walk us through these future use options. So the chart there on your screen is a little bit of a condensed chart from the more expansive one that is in your packet, but it does include a lot of the key information. And so on this chart, there are 4 potential options for future use of the Hillsborough Bridge Shelter, and they are listed in order of increasing cost. And that cost is really a cost in the generic sense. It's just based on the information that we know about projects generally. For example, that a total demolition and redevelopment of the site is more expensive than renovating the existing site. And so, so we haven't done any specific cost estimates for the project, but just know in general, these uses of it would be more expensive. So the first option there, option A, is to continue the shelter use. So continue to serve extremely low income individuals and couples, so 0 to 30% of the median family income. It would continue to provide 60 rooms of non-congregate shelter. And the construction scope would be some general repair as needed, and facility staff have been working with our development staff as well to identify some of those current needs, and then also near-term needs in the next 3 to 5 years. And then at the end of the useful life of the building, the buildings would be demolished, and then a new shelter facility would be built on the site. Option B is to provide permanent supportive housing. And so it would continue to serve that 0 to 30% median family income level, and continue to serve individuals and couples, and would provide 58 units. So essentially it's using the existing buildings as they are, but adding kitchenettes to the units, and then using 2 of those 60 rooms to provide additional laundry space and additional office space. So moving on to options C and D, both of those are providing permanent affordable housing. So option C is still using the existing buildings that are there on site, but really reconfiguring them. So a lot more renovation work than option B, but reconfiguring them into a little bit larger studio units. So still serving low income, primarily individuals and couples, but at a slightly higher income level at 40 to 60% median family income, but still serving low income individuals in our county. So it'd reconfigure those existing units to provide the 40 studios, and then add the laundry and expanded office space, as well as some additional exterior upgrades and site upgrades, building improvements. So, and then option D is the total demolition of the existing building and redevelopment of the site. So current zoning will allow up to 80 units. And so that's why in this scenario, it can provide both a wider number of units, larger number of units, and a wider variety of unit sizes. So in all the other options, the project is serving individuals and couples. So with this option, there is potential to serve families on the site by having a variety of unit sizes from studios to 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And in this option, we would consider serving a little bit still low income low income level at 60% of the median family income level, but slightly higher as a way to, most of the financing tools available for this kind of development would serve that income level. And I see Commissioner Willie has their hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question. What's the footprint of that property? How big is the property itself?
That is a good question. I believe it is on this. Sorry, I'm just going to slide down to this. It does not have the acreage on here.
Yeah, I didn't, and it's not important. You can get back to me on that. I was
Okay.
just, when you're talking about 80 units versus 40 units and demolishing the building and those kinds of things and what it's permitted to do. Anyway, I was just wondering how big of a footprint that is. And primarily, I think from my standpoint, just seeing it would be, we certainly don't want to build something that's overwhelming, I guess, against our neighbors there in the certainly the lower buildings in the neighborhood. So anyway, yeah, just you can get back to me on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we'll definitely follow up with that information. And so your comment does lead into our the next component of this, which is the community engagement. So ensuring that whatever is, however the site is used in the future, that it is in alignment or takes into account feedback from the community. And so, as Josh mentioned, when we first acquired the building, there wasn't the same opportunity for community engagement as we have before us now. And so it's really exciting for us because community engagement informs a lot of our work, both on the services side and on the, as we look at building projects throughout the community. And so with this project also with the Hillsborough Bridge Shelter, we can also align with work that the city of Hillsborough is planning to do with their 10th Avenue Visioning project. And so we're meeting with staff there later this week and, and excited to align that work and look at the project, look at the Hillsborough Bridge Shelter project in the context of that larger 10th Avenue Visioning project. And then the final bullet there on that community engagement slide is just to clarify that the goal of this community engagement work is to gain a lot of great input from community members, but to clarify that the final decision making for the future use of the site lies with your board, with the Board of County Commissioners. We've put together just a brief timeline of the initial next steps in this process. So we would envision the community engagement process would occur between August and November of this year. And then in November and December, we would take all that input and consider the options that we have and get some more concrete numbers with regard to how much the different options would cost and the different financing options available for those different projects in November and December. And then in January, we would plan to bring those final recommendations back to your board. And so that leads us into our the requested areas of feedback that we had for your board. And so the two questions there on the slide. So are there future use options? So from that chart that your board wants to remove from consideration? And then is your board supportive of staff conducting the community engagement around those remaining options? And so I want to thank you for your time and add Jess Larson, Supportive Housing Services Program Manager, is also available to assist Comey, Josh, and I in addressing any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone on the team. We'll start with Commissioner Rogers. Go ahead, Commissioner Rogers.
I don't have a specific question about the project, but about what's happening in Hillsborough. And I don't need to know all the background. I just knew that there was a bit of concern from the business community as well, I think from the city, a bit about what was happening and how it was all going to be put together. Is all that been satisfied at this point, and are we on beyond those discussions, or is the city, and maybe Jerry knows, I don't know, he was involved in all that, but I just remember the chatter, and it wasn't something I got directly involved in. Can you tell me what's happening?
Yeah, well, I can kind of kick off and then hand it over to Jess. So there was a lot of considerations going on. There's a 10th Avenue project that's taking place. We're trying to partner with the city around that. And then obviously when we first stood up the shelter, we had a lot of meetings with the public, And there's a lot of just discussions about, the public process at the front end, what we're going to do with the site, and then how could we best support the community now that we had a shelter there, being a good neighbor. So I can maybe pass over to Jess, because I know that Jess and others within the county had some different conversations with the community.
Thank you, Commissioner and Josh. And for the record, my name is Jess Larson. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Supportive Housing Services Program Manager. I think that the program proceeds very productively right now, and in partnership with local businesses and the surrounding community. In fact, it's been a significant resource for us as we've had to close some of the winter shelter programs. And in those closing, there are folks that don't have somewhere to go. And so we've been able to leverage the bridge shelter program in Hillsborough to help people transition from one shelter into that program on a couple of occasions. We've also been able to make use of the COVID respite beds for some of that flexibility, but also responding to changes into COVID rates and such. So frankly, the conversations have been primarily about meeting the community needs around shelter, emergency shelter, and it's been going along very productively from the programmatic perspective.
Commissioner Willie, did you want to share an answer to Commissioner Rogers' question about some of what you're hearing from community, and then I'll follow up with what I've been hearing?
Well, I believe at this point, I would say the best news that I could give you, Roy, and the rest of the commission and everybody else, is that I haven't heard anything. And so there has been, I haven't heard any updates or any communication at all from the Latinx Policy Council or from the city of Hillsborough either. And so I think I'm taking that as good news. From the standpoint of really, because we did get started on the wrong foot on this, and it took us a long time and a lot of work to get back in sync with everyone, I am very happy to see that in your slide 8, that you're showing community engagement, excuse me, for basically 4 months, because I think it's going to be very important that we hear what they would like that property to look like when we're in a little bit more of a long-term mode. And I think it's going to be interesting to hear what options they may consider on this. And I think my only question is, so in your 4 options, you show dollar signs out there from a cost standpoint. Is SHS going to pay whatever option or whatever variation is it? Are we using SHS money to do that? Or can we only use that money for specific parts of that?
Well, I can take the first crack at this. Comey's our housing, and Shannon our housing finance expertise. So I think it really depends on what the options are, right? We're going to be coming forward in the upcoming months with some options for what SHS funding can be used on the capital side, but that's fairly limited. When we're talking about doing some type of rehab or a total demolition, then you're starting to get into conversations about tax credits and bond financing and all those different types of various options. And that's where that's where Comey and Shannon kind of point us in that direction. Comey, is there anything I'm missing on that area, or is that about right?
You got it right, yes. And obviously the options we present are not exhaustive. I mean, after the neighborhood community engagement process, there could be more options. So we are open to all of that.
Any other commissioner questions or comments? Remember, our staff posed 2 different questions for us. Oh, Commissioner Treese's thumbs up. How about you, Commissioner Fye? Thumbs up? Okay, Commissioner Willie's thumbs up, so is Commissioner Rogers. So I'll do sweep. I support the community engagement approach and making sure that our community has the opportunity to see that we're exploring all of the options, right? So no, I don't want to remove any of those options. They all sound very useful. And to that point, I want to make one of the things that I have had the benefit of learning as a commissioner these last few years is the incredible need that we have for different solution types. And so, for example, if the building is converted so that it doesn't offer the same level of solutions for individuals and couples, right? That's one reason, that was one of our holes in the portfolio. Then if we transition away from that, then we still have a need, a gap to fill, right? So I'm hopeful that in the community engagement material, you'll have a slide or a board that communicates that there are different needs, individuals, couples, families, people with disabilities, to just name a few. And that's why we have an overall portfolio that we as the county commission have to work across all 13 cities and urban unincorporated Washington County to provide for. So I'm not sure quite how you practice that art, but I just wanted to highlight that that is one aspect of this that I'm hopeful our community will have the opportunity to grasp as they provide input on each of these opportunities. And I like how Commissioner Willie put it, what they want the property to look like. You know, that's a really interesting question. You know, for some, it's simply that they didn't like the color, right? I've seen wonderful renderings of the former Aloha Inn in a new color scheme, and wow, that's transformative simply with paint. You know, it's things like that sometimes that can make a huge difference, or just some new plantings. I do want to come back to the question that Commissioner Rogers asked him, what's happening in Hillsborough and what are we hearing? I just recently, last week, had the opportunity to engage with some folks from the Latino Policy Council. And in addition to what our staff has heard from different community members in the 10th Avenue area, and they are so thankful for the county's engagement since the acquisition of the property, not just for SHS, but also for the economic revitalization and the partnership with the city of Hillsborough. So thank you, staff, for doing all of that work. And I know it's not just the housing team, there's our economic development team. So it's Washington County staff as a whole. Thank you for being a great one, Washington County. And on the second question, yes, I'm really appreciative of your conducting this community engagement so that our community members know that we're not deciding now, right? We're asking input for the whole portfolio of options because that is what's on the table. We're not trying to select one of those options today, rather to say, here's a range of options. What are your thoughts if it's this, or this, right? Because people can have different opinions on each one of those four scenario, so to speak. So that's it from me. And I look forward to learning more from our community about our community as we do this work in service to our community. Thank you, team. Keep up the awesome work.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners.
We're full steam ahead with you. Terrific. Well, thank you. So we're a little ahead of schedule. Thank you very much to our housing team. We now have a break for 15 minutes. Ms. Angie, that would put us a half an hour in advance of the schedule. So I don't know if we'll stick to topic 3 or if you want to switch 3 and 4 or what have you. So I'll just leave it there with the invitation for you and Mr. Carr to figure that out, and we'll reconvene here at 10:30 and go from there. Does that sound good?
Yes, and I can actually respond. Right now, we will continue with item 3 after the break because our staff is ready and on deck to start that item.
Terrific. Great. Well, we'll see you back here at 10:30, folks. Thank you. How we doing, folks? It's 10:30. Looks like we've got all the commissioners, so welcome to members of our Washington County Sustainability Team, and please take it away for this topic.
Chair Harrington and commissioners, my name is Robin Strawn. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the county's sustainability manager. We're excited to be here today to talk about climate action planning. And I'd actually like to introduce Eric Lopreet from my team. Eric is our sustainability education coordinator, and in that role, he leads sustainability education, outreach, and engagement. And he coordinates the Partners for a Sustainable Washington County Community. I'm going to turn it over to Eric now to go ahead and start our presentation.
All right, thank you, Robin, so much for that introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So everybody is right. All right. So hello, Chair Harrington and Board of Washington County Commissioners. For the record, my name is Eric Lopreet. I'm the Sustainability Education Coordinator, and we are very excited to be here with you today to talk about climate action planning here at the county. This is our agenda for today. We're going to start with an overview of climate change, including climate science and the local impacts that we are already experiencing here in Washington County. We'll then go over some key terms in climate action planning and point out in particular two of the major components of any climate action plan, which are the greenhouse gas inventory and community engagement process. We'll then show you some climate action plan examples from some of our regional partners to give you an idea of more or less the resources that might be required to implement a plan here at the county. We'll translate all of that into an overview of the steps required to complete a climate action plan in order before ending with policy questions. The purpose of our presentation today is to discuss the commencement of community climate action work here at Washington County. This is a super important step in the evolution of our work here in sustainability here at the county, and we are very excited for it. And our desired outcomes for today are that the Board of County Commissioners provides input on the development of a climate action plan and co-creation of a project scope. We have two key questions for you today. The first is, what questions do you have about climate action planning? And the second is, what next steps would the Board of County Commissioners desire in the climate action planning discussion? So we will return to these questions at the end of the presentation. So to understand the reason behind a climate action plan, let's start with climate science. Climate change is caused by humans who are burning fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are coal, natural gas, and crude oil-based products such as gasoline or diesel or jet fuel. We burn fossil fuels for just about every aspect of modern life, in our transportation system, to produce our energy, to operate our commercial and residential buildings, and even to grow our food. Fossil fuels are made of carbon. So when we combine the carbon in a fossil fuel with the oxygen in the air and we light it on fire, we produce CO2, or carbon dioxide, and other greenhouse gases such as methane, nitrous oxide, chlorofluorocarbons, and a handful of others. These gases trap heat. And since the Industrial Revolution, we have burned so many fossil fuels and emitted so many greenhouse gases into the atmosphere that we are trapping excess heat here on Earth. This excess heat is causing the global temperatures to rise, as well as all of the other negative side effects of climate change that you've probably heard about. We are already experiencing those harmful effects of climate change here in Washington County. We all remember the heat dome event from 2021, which saw record-breaking temperatures of 114 degrees recorded at the Hillsborough airport. This extreme heat led to a statewide increase in emergency department visits and over 100 deaths in Oregon, including 8 here in Washington County. Scientists say the heat dome would not have been possible if not for human-caused climate change. The year before that, we had unprecedented wildfires across the state, exacerbated by climate change, including here in Washington County. Those wildfires were coupled with high winds that blew smoke into our community, giving us the world's worst air quality during that time. The smoke led to a 20% increase in emergency department and urgent care visits for asthma-like symptoms in the 4 weeks during and after the fires. These severe weather events, along with drought, decreased snowpack, and biodiversity loss, are only expected to increase and become worse as climate change progresses. This information, along with even more connections between climate change and human health, can be found in the 2021 Regional Climate and Health Monitoring Report, which was authored by staff of Washington County Public Health and other regional partners. Climate action planning and sustainability, just like many other areas, has its technical language. So we wanted to take some time with you today to review some important concepts in climate action planning. Greenhouse gases, commonly abbreviated as GHGs, are primarily carbon dioxide and methane. They come from the burning of fossil fuels, and they are the leading drivers of climate change. Mitigation means reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Science tells us that if we want to reverse climate change, we need to stop emitting greenhouse gases in the first place. An example of mitigation could be an electric vehicle. You could replace your internal combustion engine vehicle that burns gasoline and emits carbon dioxide out the tailpipe for one that runs on electricity and produces no direct emissions at all. By doing this, you reduce your contribution to climate change, which is mitigation. Adaptation means changing our processes in order to live with climate change. Climate change is here to stay, and it's only projected to get worse. Adaptation strategies frequently double as mitigation strategies, like an electric vehicle. In addition to being a carbon-free form of transportation, an electric vehicle could help power your home in the case of a climate-caused outage. However, adaptation does not necessarily have to be mitigation. An example of that could be an artificial shade structure. These structures do nothing to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but they do provide much needed relief for folks who are outside on hot days, which are only expected to increase, allowing our community to adapt to climate change. Sequestration means pulling greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere. This is usually done through natural processes like planting trees or restoring native habitats, but can also be done by utilizing carbon capture and storage technology. Carbon neutral and net zero are two terms that are both used to set carbon reduction goals, and both mean generally the same thing. And that's that the emissions from a community are offset or are countered, canceled out by the amount of carbon that is being absorbed from the atmosphere. The difference here is that carbon neutrality generally implies the purchase of carbon offsets, such as an investment in a solar farm or a reforestation project, while net zero achieves the balance through direct action, such as mitigation or sequestration. In a net zero scenario, the community would actually produce no direct emissions at all and would not require the purchase of offsets. Resilience is the ability to absorb climate-related shocks and stressors. This could relate to the built environment, such as with bridges or roads or buildings, but also to humans' abilities to survive, recover from, and thrive despite the changing climate. In the context of a Washington County Climate Action Plan, resilience will be an outcome of mitigation, adaptation, sequestration. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to do any action that doesn't result in increased resilience for our community. You might, though, hear something about resilience planning, which resilience planning goes far beyond climate action planning in the traditional sense to include factors such as earthquake preparedness. This is often the next step taken after an organization's first successful climate action plan, and is something that our regional partners have not recommended that we start with. Equity means just and fair outcomes. Washington County recognizes that low income, low wealth, and communities of color bear disproportionate burden of climate change, otherwise known as climate injustice. It is no coincidence that these communities have been historically, systematically, and forcefully excluded from participating in decisions that affect their abilities to respond to climate change. So because of this, equity will be at the center of any Washington County climate action plan. And lastly, we'd like to make a distinction between internal and community-facing initiatives. Internal initiatives deal with the direct business operations of the county, such as the fuel burned in a county-owned vehicle or the energy consumed by a county-owned building. Community-facing initiatives might take place with the support of county resources, but are felt beyond our operations, such as with residences, businesses, industries, schools, or community groups. So because these can take place with the support of county resources, oftentimes the line between what's an internal and what's a community-facing initiative could be blurred. There's some gray area there. And our community partners have dealt with this in different ways, and we'll show you that a little later. All of these terms can be found on the definition sheet, which was included as part of your board packet. With all that in mind, what is a climate action plan? At its absolute most basic level, a climate action plan is a framework to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, otherwise known as mitigation. However, through the community engagement process, and in our case, the co-creation process, additional frames and strategies come to the surface that help the plan respond to specific community needs. Some of these frames and strategies could be equity, adaptation, resilience, public health, or environmental justice. Climate action plans include goals. The state of Oregon has goals to reduce emissions by 75% over 1990 levels by 2050. And Metro has goals to reduce emissions by 80% below 2008 levels by 2050. But both of these are sort of outdated with relation to current goal setting conventions. Most current climate action plan goals utilize forward-looking terms such as net zero or carbon neutral, such as the federal government's goal to be net zero by 2050. So while one kind of looks backwards and compares us to where we were, the other one looks forward to where we need to be. Climate action plans also include objectives based in topic areas like transportation, energy, or materials, actions that accomplish the goals of the plan, and metrics installed along the way to make sure we're on track. Climate action plans are science and evidence-based. We affirm the validity and the importance of climate science and climate data to making educated and informed decisions. Climate action plans require significant amounts of resources, not the least of which include funding, time, employees, contractors, community members, spaces, even energy. We'll share a bit with you later about the resources that our community partners have allocated towards their plans in a little bit. Climate action plans generally have some mix of internal and community focus. Again, we'll return to that a little later. And then lastly, climate action plans require collaboration across jurisdictions. This line right here is actually new. This is not part of the presentation that was included in your board packet, but we did realize this was very important to include, so that's why it's here. Washington County is a member of 2 regional sustainability coalitions, Partners for a Sustainable Washington County Community, or PSWCC, and the Public Sector Sustainability Roundtable, or PSSR. These organizations help facilitate meaningful, impactful collaboration among the public agencies in our region. Our regional partners have expressed interest in co-developing climate action-related metrics and processes to ensure consistency for our larger community. And we look forward to continuing our work with them moving forward. One of the major components of any climate action plan is a greenhouse gas inventory. Greenhouse gas inventories figure out how the community is currently contributing to climate change and are generally broken down by sector, such as what you see on screen: transportation, electricity, industry, commercial and residential, and agriculture. The reason for doing a greenhouse gas inventory is to ensure that any actions taken as part of a climate action plan are reflective of the community's current emissions. So in our case, a Washington County greenhouse gas inventory will be unique to us and will help inform a plan that is also unique to us. Greenhouse gas inventories are conducted by consultants, and we will be using the results of the inventory in conjunction with the community to help inform our actions. The board has given us the direction to co-create this plan with the community. To do that, we'll be utilizing the community engagement spectrum to analyze and plan for community engagement activities, partner with the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, and consult with our vendor for best practices, and ensure that our community engagement process is trauma-informed and culturally appropriate. We intend to engage as many of the most highly impacted communities as possible, in particular our Indigenous partners and communities of color. Our partner regional jurisdictions have engaged the community in different ways, such as by creating a climate action task force or other type of advisory board, and participating with already existing groups such as community participation organizations, though any Washington County plan would be unique to us and our circumstances. We look forward to partnering with the board, the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, and our vendor on the creation of an effective and equitable community advisory group or groups. Our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, Latricia Tillman, has this really fantastic quote about the community engagement process, which is that community engagement, quote, moves forward at the speed of trust, end quote. We'll be showing you some timelines here shortly, but the reality is that we don't really know exactly when these steps will be completed because our community members will be the folks who decide that for the most part. We wanted to share with you some of the work that our regional partners have done or are already doing for their climate action plans. As much as we want to give you a close estimate for the resources that would be required for a Washington County plan, there really is no way to know this until you all as the board have had time to discuss and we've engaged the community on the scope of the project. A few things to keep in mind about these three organizations. They are all cities or counties in Western Oregon. This is each of their first climate action plans, just like Washington County would be. And they have all included community greenhouse gas mitigation and equity as core components of their plan. You can see that on the bar on the top of your screen. What we'd like to show you here is some of the major differences between these plans and to give you as close of an idea as possible about the resource commitment that a Washington County plan could require. Organization 1 set a net zero emissions goal by 2040. They did not include any additional frames beyond greenhouse gas mitigation and equity, though this is phase 2 of a larger 3-phase climate plan. Phase 1 was an internal plan, phase 2 is what we're talking about here, and then phase 3 is a resilience plan. So just for phase 2, they spent 20 months developing the plan with the support of 1 full-time employee, and they awarded $90,000 in contracts to firms to help with the community engagement process and the greenhouse gas inventory. Organization 2 set a zero emissions goal by 2050. This is also slightly different from what you saw in your board packet. The other one said carbon neutral by 2030. That one is actually their internal goal. And to keep it consistent, we wanted to make sure that this showed the external goal. So this is the community goal of zero emissions by 2050. They added adaptation and health and safety as additional frames beyond mitigation and equity. And they integrated internal operations throughout their plan. So while organization 1 had a separate internal plan, this one decided to mingle them together. It took them 36 months to complete the plan. This was much longer than they anticipated, but they had some unexpected things happen, especially with staff turnover. They had 1 full-time employee dedicated to the plan, though they recommend that if an organization were to take on a similar size project, that they would dedicate 3 to 4 full-time employees to it. And they awarded a single $100,000 contract to help with the greenhouse gas inventory and community engagement. Organization 3 set a carbon neutral goal by 2050. In addition to greenhouse gas mitigation and equity, they added adaptation, resilience, and just transition as frames. Just transition is it's like an environmental justice focused frame. They were the only ones of these 3 and one of the only ones in the entire region to co-create their plan with the community. They are still in this process. They have not finished their plan. And so what you see in terms of resources is what they've committed so far. It's going to take them what they think is going to be significantly longer than 36 months to complete with the help of 2 full-time employees. And they have so far awarded $325,000 in contracts for the community engagement and greenhouse gas inventory. We want to recognize the support and the leadership of the Washington County Board of Commissioners over the years, and especially in recent years, to lay the foundation for a successful and equitable climate action plan. This all started back in 2009 with the passing of the Sustainability Resolution and Order, which created what is now known as the Sustainability Division. Since then, sustainability has been focused on internal operations, helping the county reduce building energy, fleet fuel, water, and waste. Fast forward to 2020, the board adopted the Equity Resolution, in which the board committed to, quote, structuring our organization to model services, practices, and engagement approaches that equitably meet the needs of all residents, end quote, and which led to the creation of the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement. We also held the first annual Earth Day proclamation that year, in which the board proclaimed that, quote, the challenges ahead, such as climate change and environmental justice, must be acknowledged, end quote. In 2021, Washington County concluded its most recent sustainability plan, and we presented our accomplishments to the board. And the board adopted the new energy management policy, which was its first ever board adopted sustainability policy. This year in 2022, the board adopted Washington County's first ever land acknowledgement policy, an important step in building positive relationships with our region's indigenous peoples, and was present as we recertified our Green Business Award alongside Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling. It was also this year that the board provided staff direction to start community-facing climate action work, which is why we are here with you today. So since this is our first climate action plan, we consulted with our regional partners to ask them how they accomplished their plans. What you see on screen here is a combination of their processes, as well as some Washington County specific actions that we propose that we take. Our first proposed step is to start co-creating the scope of the plan with the community and bring it to you for approval. Once the scope is approved and funding is allocated, we can start the RFP process to select a vendor, and to do that in partnership with the community. Once the vendor is selected, we can perform the greenhouse gas inventory, do the data analysis, perform the community engagement, and create a plan that we can bring back to you. We propose to keep you involved throughout this process, whether that's through regular presentations, a board liaison, or some other means. Once we present you with a plan, we'd like to get your feedback, which would then kick off an iterative process by which we go back to the community, we create the new parts of the plan, bring it to you again, and so on, until we've created a document that we're proud of. Once that happens, we can formally present the plan to the board for adoption, which would then allow us to start implementation. One thing to keep in mind is that all of this would be happening with the backdrop of simultaneous climate action work being done by other departments here at Washington County. Health and Human Services will be working on a climate and health adaptation plan, which is a requirement for their work with the Oregon Health Authority, while Land Use and Transportation will be implementing new state rules around climate-friendly and equitable communities. We'll be sure to coordinate all of these processes internally. So with that, we'd like to return to our key questions for the board. First one, what questions do you have about climate action planning? And the second, what next steps would the Board of County Commissioners desire in the climate action planning discussion? Thank you all so much for your time today, and we look forward to your questions and comments.
Commissioners, which one of you would like to start us off?
I'm happy to go forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers.
Yeah, this isn't obviously new to us. We've been on this path for a few years now, looking at the various issues. And one question, one comment. The question is what expertise do we have in-house, meaning really either doctoral or folks who have some amount of experience in this whole area, because it's very complicated. So that's a question. And one comment, we're saying things pretty authoritative about it. It's all caused by greenhouse gases. There's a number of things, obviously, that create climate change. And I'm hoping in whatever consultant group that you're going to have a very robust look at those, because I mean it's everything from we as humans moving around to you know, our sewer systems. We know that that's an issue, and we know that the treatment of various things in our society, such as cremation of bodies. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so I like the direction. I certainly support our work, and I hope that we have some internal expertise and we hire some external, so that we know what steps we can take in a world economy where we may be able to do certain things, but we certainly can't control the world, but we can help mitigate that. And so I was kind of rambling, but Robin, you and I have talked about a number of things over years. So tell me about who's your experts, you know, that you got in staff, and do you intend to hire those? And are you going to have a very comprehensive, robust look at, you know, not just carbon? We know that one, that's an obvious one, but I mean, there are other things. So what are we going to be looking at?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. As far as what expertise we have in-house, we do have a team of 3 full-time employees in the sustainability division that are very well steeped in sustainability best practices, and addressing climate change, especially from the operational standpoint. We are also very fortunate at Washington County to have the Office of Equity and Inclusion and Community Engagement, where we have some amazing expertise in community engagement. Not all of our peer jurisdictions have that as an in-house availability. So those are the two key, I'd say, experts, expert groups that we have in climate related planning work. Obviously, the various departments have their own expertise, whether it's related to the built environment in our facilities group, and then land use and transportation, or our fleet division, which has expertise in vehicles and vehicle acquisition and management. So we have a number of internal county staff that will be contributing to this. Right now, there's no specific coordination among all of us to really hone in on what expertise we have and what expertise we need. That's probably part of the scoping process. And then as far as your discussion about the causes of climate change, we are focusing on what most organizations are highlighting as the best ways to address and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. And that is most specifically by reducing fossil fuel use. There are many other things that contribute to climate change. We can't necessarily address all of them. Some of them are natural processes, but that's the best way, that the kind of the industry standard way to address climate action.
So Robin, just a real quick follow-up. We're somewhat blessed on the county commission that we also have CWS as a partner, and they have scientists, they have specific folks with all kinds of expertise. So the county presently doesn't have someone that we would have in a doctoral position with those credentials. I mean, you're describing equity people and you're describing internal people who are doing processes, but as far as the science, it doesn't sound like it. So that's what we have. So I understand that's what we're going to have to hire, is somebody who has those kinds of technicalities. And the actions that you're looking at are fairly focused only on fossil fuels. You're not looking at what we more comprehensively might do to look at all of the various sources of pollutants and causes. So am I getting, I'm not being judgmental, I'm just trying to understand what you're doing and what you're going to ask for money to do.
Yeah, okay, so I think what you're getting at is we don't necessarily have all the scientific background in our organization. We do, I did conduct the last greenhouse gas inventory that we did operationally, but that's very different than doing a community greenhouse gas inventory, which is why we do need some outside expertise and partnership with our utilities and a number of other agencies to make sure we're capturing all the correct data. Yes, it is awesome that we have Clean Water Services as our partner here in this, because they're going to be a key partner as well. As far as someone with, you're suggesting maybe a doctoral level, like data abilities, we don't have that, but we have pretty good systems in place how we're managing and tracking our data and metrics currently. We would just need to have, it's always wise to have a third party look at all of your data practices and your data management, as well as to help find that data that's not internally available. Yeah, I think I answered that, but yeah, I mean, in terms of what we include in the greenhouse gas inventory and what we include in a climate action plan, we would look to experts that have already done these for other jurisdictions to help inform us what types of emissions we need to be tracking, reducing, and addressing.
So Commissioner Treese, you're next. I just want to remind us all that this is a time for us on the board to have discussion about this really big topic too. So we're going to be in this question and discussion mode for a little bit here, so no worries. Go ahead, Commissioner Treese. And then I see you next, Commissioner Willie.
Well, thank you, Chair. Eric, I think you just did your presentation was great. I really appreciated it. It was educational. It hit on some key aspects for me that I think are incredibly important: the engagement of the community, the focus on equity, and Commissioner Rogers, to your point, Eric, I stalked you a bit on online and see that you graduated with a very high honors in the master's program from Arizona State in sustainability. So we're pretty close there, Roy. So I just want to give you a shout out on that, Eric. And and I know your experience, Robin, is deep as well. So my question is really more to the board as a whole. This just really excites me. It makes me feel like we're on the right path here. We're moving forward, and I would like to make sure that as we move forward, that each of us as board members think about what do we want in representation from the community as we look at forming a community action or community task force, community advisory committee, whatever we may call that. But I really think that it's important that we focus on that as well, because the five of us come to this picture with a variety of inputs. So again, Eric, great presentation, really good material. I'd love to know who those 3 different companies are. Maybe you'll tell me in secret later. But anyway, thank you for your presentation.
Commissioner Willie, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Eric, I want to follow along what Pam was just talking about, the collaboration part. I really appreciate that. I'm going to circle back around to that in just a second. I think what I liked best, honestly, of your presentation was your explanation of the terms, because I was struggling with the difference between carbon neutral and net zero. So you explained that, and I appreciate that. And then I'm learning a lot about sequestration when we're talking about our forests and how much of our trees absorb of the carbon. And so I'm learning a lot as we go, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. As far as collaboration, I'm hoping that because we are doing this as Washington County, I'm hoping that we are also including conversations with our cities. And so I don't know where they plug in there, but I'm sure that each one of them, or certainly Hillsborough and Beaverton, I'm sure, being the larger cities, have some climate policies or some climate visionary goals. So I'm hoping that we are working with them. Have you had any conversations with the cities?
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. And I will probably forget all the cities that are involved in the Partners for a Sustainable Washington County Community, but Beaverton and Hillsborough are definitely part of that group. And we just last week had a great presentation from City of Beaverton about their climate action plan. So we do work with most of the cities in Washington County as part of that group to support sustainability and climate initiatives. And through the PSSR, that's actually it's actually a region-wide group. We work with cities all across Oregon, cities and counties, as well as other special districts, federal agencies, and state agencies as well. So we do have great connections in all those places.
So this is, I'm assuming that everyone is basically at the same stage as we are. We're just kind of moving in that direction, gaining information, having conversations. Is there anybody out there that's way out ahead of us, I guess, on this?
The City of Portland and Multnomah County collaborated on a climate action plan a number of years ago. So they're probably one of the leaders in this area. Metro has their own climate goals and sustainability plan in place that's been there for a while as well. The jurisdictions that were referenced in the examples are the 3 that are most recently completed or are completing their plans. They include some of the next largest counties in Oregon and a city in Washington County as well. So everyone's at a little bit of a different stage in this. I think Tualatin is in the middle of their process right now. So everyone has either recently adopted it, has something that's been in place for a few years, or they're just starting the process.
Okay, just 2 more quick questions, and kind of referring to Pam being curious about who the 3 are. They had to expend monies to do that. Is there outside grants or some funding that would be available to that, keeping in mind that our budget's pretty doggone tight right now and anticipated to continue that way? So is there some outside funding that's available to us?
Yeah, some of the groups that we talked with about this have enterprise funding. So they were able to support it through special work that they do in their jurisdiction, like garbage fees or whatever. But I haven't heard of any groups specifically that we talked to that got grant funding for this type of thing with a climate action plan. It's I do know that there is some environmental justice funding available at the federal level. And I think some of our partners are tapping into that for very specific components of implementation of their climate action plans. But I've not heard of any, and Eric, please correct me if I'm wrong, any specific funding sources that help cities, counties, or local governments conduct plans.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. The funding that I've heard about has been on the implementation side. Like once it's already been adopted, okay, PGE Drive Change Fund could help with electrification of vehicles and things, but in terms of plan development, I haven't heard of any.
Okay, and then real quickly, one last question. I have a couple of months ago, I ordered my first electric car. It has not arrived yet. But sometimes when I tell people that I've done that, they say that there is more carbon generated in the creation of the batteries than what we save in fossil fuels. So how would you respond to that?
Eric, do you want to take this one? Or do you want me to?
Very good tag team. We actually have gotten several questions from county employees about this as well. So we've gotten to do some research to respond to some internal questions. And we found that, yes, there is significant carbon emissions with the production of an EV. The amount that is required to produce an electric vehicle is actually more than to produce an internal combustion engine vehicle. But regardless actually of the fuel source of your electricity, over time, your EV is actually much more carbon friendly because just by plugging it in, it's way more, it's still better, even if it's coal fired, than it is using gas. So the longer you have your EV, the even better it is, and the cleaner your energy it is, the even better it is.
Yeah, and I think what Eric's getting at is the biggest impact of operating a vehicle is in the operating the vehicle. I mean, it's not really in producing the upstream or production, it's in the operation, assuming you're going to have that vehicle for a number of years or decades. And so that's typically, if you look at the full life cycle of a vehicle, it will balance in favor of electric vehicles. And we are very fortunate here in the Pacific Northwest and in the Portland metro region to have a partner like Portland General Electric, who is already planning to go to zero carbon emissions, I believe, by 2040. So that means your source of fuel is just going to get cleaner and cleaner over the years as we get toward that 2040, 2050 timeline.
It's good to hear. I didn't want to just be accused of trying to save $6 a gallon on gas. So good answer. Thank you. That's all I have.
So you're personally well positioned. Thank you for getting on the EV highway. Commissioner Fye, how about you?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. And thanks for that last question, Commissioner Willie. I think we're all interested in electric cars, and I think that's a question that comes up certainly among circle of friends. And thank you for the answer. Eric, you did a wonderful job with this presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate Robin and the whole team, especially the definition one pager that you included. I think it's really, you know, when I look at our board packets, I usually try to approach the lens of, if I was a community member, would I understand if I didn't attend this board presentation, if I didn't have the time to listen to our board, to the staff to explain? And I felt like your PowerPoint presentation really did that job very well. So kudos and congratulations. I think your questions, what questions do I have? I don't really have any questions about the climate action planning. And look forward to continuing this discussion, I would say. Just a quick advertisement for something that Commissioner Treese and I are working on, and something that we plan to bring forward to our board for consideration. Is no secret that we're working on a resolution to bring forward for consideration in the future. So I look forward to this discussion and our board about that resolution in the future. And of course, everyone will have plenty of time to review the resolution and to go back to some of our board leadership update this morning. Hopefully a unanimous support on a climate resolution. So look forward to it. And good job, team.
Okay, I'll go next to continue the round of our conversation. So thank you, Ms. Angie, Robin, Eric, and others on the team for helping us pivot. You know, the board in 2019 wanted to have a conversation and really get going in discussing climate planning here in Washington County. But with all things, there are only so many hours in the day and only so many dollars in the budget. So I want to start, of course, in reflecting the thanks for helping us pivot. You've done a tremendous lot since that 2009 resolution to improve the operations of the county as a community serving county, and reducing our negative footprint, our impact on this planet, and doing so very prudently. Thank you very much. I am really pleased that we are able to pivot our focus a bit from just our internal operations to being more engaged with our community. As you have correctly stated, our climate is changing, right? It's happening. We're there. And so one of my pieces of feedback or thought through all this discussion is, I want to ensure we have community engagement, but I'm not sure I'm fully there yet on community planning, right? And particularly, I think there is some prep work or scoping work yet. And this is an area that I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to serve for a second term, because this feels to me like work not yet done when I ran for this position. And I know Commissioner Treese and I have had some discussions along the way and want to continue to see it focused. But I think we as the board are going to need to explore this space a little bit more, because there is a balancing act that Ms. Angie has been very successful in getting us to realize. So that's just a high level setup. What I really want, there are 4 different points that I want to share. We're living with climate change, right? You've put it very well. And so it's really a matter of, so what are we going to do about it, right? Part of what I realized, segueing to my second point, is, wow, I've learned a lot through this COVID-19 global pandemic. And over these last 2.5 years, serving in this position as a county commissioner and chair, I have challenged myself in a leadership role to reduce the number of deaths from that planetary threat and to reduce suffering for families here in Washington County. And lastly, if I had a third hand, to reduce the negative economic impacts of the pandemic, right? I think for me, having learned from the effects of this global pandemic, those 3 goals still remain, right? So part of what I'm trying to figure out, I've heard your approach on, I didn't look back at the slide number, but talking about climate action plan examples, net zero, carbon neutral, so on and so forth, that stack of 3. I'm not quite there yet, right? This is where I'm perhaps not as far as along the journey as my colleagues are. I need some more prep time in terms of what are we really trying to accomplish, because, well, quite frankly, I don't want to oversell and underdeliver with the community. So, it really goes down to the question of what is the purpose for our planning, right? I would assert we want to continue to be prudent with county resources. We want to help our community survive, adapt, and thrive. So the vocabulary of, are we going to be net zero or zero emissions or carbon neutral? Boy, that has me dealing with a term of art that I need us to develop some more. It's not language unique to us, but making all of this more relatable, because we are a county government, right, in service to community. So towards that end, a third bucket or a third topic area is we are already as a county dealing with all kinds of requirements placed on us. And in some ways, mandates. And there are some that you've already touched on, right? The state goals, the metro goals, even the middle housing legislation that was passed was primarily advanced to ensure that we have more housing types. But with that, it is building on our requirements for a connected community so people can get around in their everyday needs in our compact metropolitan urban form, thereby saving us time in our days, because we're human and we only get 24 per day. We each get the same. Also, we don't necessarily have to travel as far for goods and services as we once did. Case in point, you want a nice dinner, you don't have to go to downtown Portland anymore. You can find it right here in Hillsborough, Beaverton, Tigard, Tualatin, blah, blah, blah. But there are requirements on us for other things like energy use, greenhouse gas inputs and outputs. And so I want to be I'll say I flunked the test in terms of what kind of constructs we already have to adapt to. Then there's, oh, I guess I had 5, sorry. Our county-wide role with county-wide service portfolio, right? I don't want people thinking that we're trying to take over the work that the cities are doing or anything like that. But I do know we've had some pretty recent learnings. For example, heat waves and ice waves. After the heat dome, a week after the heat dome last year at the state level, the OHA director and Oregon Human Services directors had a learning session where the state realized, okay, 211 had to go 24/7. That's still only a temporary year-by-year thing. But the other big thing is that we as a state and counties have to learn how we provide these extreme weather events, home-based community care versus expecting vulnerable community members to make it to shelters, right? And part of that is making AC available, blah, blah, blah. On the LUT front, right? Transportation connectivity, rural forestry is a part of that. And then there's a whole plethora of stuff that emergency management is already dealing with. There are lots of ideas, particularly on the urban unincorporated areas, that we may have to put in off to the side versus what we do as a county with county-wide resources. Things like having a tree program, water reduction, climate prep, because we don't have the city resources to scope that work and support that work. So what I'm really trying to get at is there's a whole body of work that we already have as a county in service to community. Some we're required to do because we are a county government, and then others that get more location-based. Lastly, I do see all of this work moving forward in relation to our upcoming community involved county strategic plan work, because we are one community and we are one county government in service to community. So for example, Robin, you mentioned earlier, we don't have an internal staff task team yet organized for doing this kind of work. Well, maybe that's something to consider as part of the scoping so that we can tell our community what we already have going on, right? Then maybe while in a prior meeting, I was pretty excited about empowering a community task force to gain input. But in order to do that, I'm concerned that we have to have some scoping. But I'm also, in preparation for today, realizing that having a community or a committee of community members focusing on climate, that maybe there's an opportunity to get that started, but to bring that into part of our community strategic planning into our next future years, right? There are some people in our community that really want to, if I could say this, and I mean it complimentary, really geek out in terms of net zero emissions and carbon neutral. Me, as much as I'm a wonky tech kind of person, that those phrases don't trip my trigger, really excite me. Whereas I do want to make sure that in service to community, that we're able to help our communities live with climate change in the decades ahead, that we are doing things with environmental justice, right? And remedying those past practices where our community members were housed in lower income communities with more industry, more greenhouse gas effects, more bad polluted air causing asthma, so on and so forth. Whew. I know I've said a lot there. What it boils down to me is to your question about next steps. I went back to your slide 14, which is titled Climate Action Plan Process. I need another box before co-creating where there's further discussion amongst staff, further conversation amongst the board with staff. So we really have a good grounding about what we have, what our opportunity might be, so that we don't end up with a messy picture once we start doing that co-create work. So those are my thoughts. And I don't know if my colleagues, I mean, there are appreciable things we can do, right, in all of that signals, yes, we've done this pivot, yes, we are getting going, but I want to make sure that we don't miss the mark where, depending upon who you ask, we'll get 1,001 answers about what the county is really trying to do, right? How do we ensure we're on the same page? I'll leave it there for the time being. See if there are any other commissioner responses or whatnot. Well, that landed like a thud, quiet thud.
Well, I can see. I appreciate your comments. I can see obviously the tie to our overall strategic work. I can understand your comments about the tie for our constituents to this work, and I have to keep myself out of worrying about the detailed comments and up here as well. So I appreciate your comments.
There are some times where I feel really concerned. Part of my geekiness is being fascinated by the fill curves for both Scoggins and Barney, and how we had a terrible year in 2001 for both of those reservoirs, and they didn't fill. Well, what happens if we have a repeat of that, right? Moving ahead. And Clean Water Services has done some amazing scenario work. I can't remember which plan it's in, but there was some really great scenario work there. And there are times when I wonder, okay, so what effect might it be on our community if we have a situation where it's 75% of what 2001 had? what effect does that have on agriculture? What effect does it have on industry? What effect does it have on our ability to return clean water to the Tualatin River, right, as a service provider? So really complex stuff that'll impact our community. Don't know. So where do you, Ms. Angie, Ms. Strawn, and Mr. Loprit, if I pronounced your last name correctly, thank you. Where do you think we go from here?
So I would suggest a good next step would be taking the board's feedback and questions and looking at our rolling agenda, and just, I would need to meet with the team and have a conversation. So I don't want to commit to a date, but you know, I'm thinking September, October, November, by that time to come back to talk more about the scope and focus of climate action planning in Washington County, given this discussion. By that time, your board at your roundtable is hearing from GFOA and rethinking budgeting and rethinking strategic planning on Thursday. So we will be on the journey of having discussions with your board about strategic planning. So I think that provides an opportunity for us to see connections and also differences between a community strategic plan and also a climate action plan. I think of a climate action plan kind of similar in some ways to a department strategic plan, you know, and so in this case, it is our climate action work. So that would connect into the strategic plan. So we can do a little thinking on that and come back to your board. In addition, I will say last year, Robin and also government relations manager Aaron Doyle did significant work with our departments to inventory all the great work we are doing at Washington County. So what we can do is just refresh that work. It's a much easier lift to refresh than start from zero, and also include that as a reminder of where we're at with your board, and make sure it's included in the agenda packet information. So and I do want to piggyback just on Commissioner Fai's comments. That way our community is also on the journey and understanding what we're currently doing here at Washington County.
Our staff heard the accolades for the one pager on terms. And so if we're able to have a one pager on what we are already doing and how that relates to community, I think that'll be another terrific asset as we continue on this journey. Commissioner Willie, did you have something? Okay. All righty. Well, we'll thank you for providing the opportunity of your continued guidance and helping us on this journey on our shared planet, and we'll look forward to our continued work together. Terrific. Okay, whoops. Time-wise, we're at 11:30. Commissioners, did we wrap that topic up okay? Okay, all righty. So next before lunch, we have a executive session. And then after our executive session, we will break for lunch and return at 1 p.m. with topic number 5. So without further ado, I'm interested in a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub H for the purposes of discussing potential litigation. We have a motion from Commissioner Treese. We have a second from Commissioner Willie. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. So commissioners, please check your calendars for the Zoom link for that executive session. And otherwise, for everyone else, we will reconvene this work session in the afternoon Zoom link, picking up with topic number 5 on our posted agenda. Thank you.